A young man discovers his grandfather's diary, a man who survived the war. The sun hung low in the late afternoon sky, casting a warm golden glow over the quaint little town of Millfield. The air was thick with the scent of autumn leaves, and the distant sound of children laughing echoed from the park. Matthew stepped through the familiar threshold of his childhood home, a place steeped in memories and shadows. It had been a week since his grandfather, Grandpa Henry, passed away, and the weight of his absence loomed heavy in the air. The house felt different now, emptier. The creaking floorboards whispered secrets as Matthew walked through the dimly lit rooms, each corner a reminder of a life well lived but now silenced. Dust motes danced in the sunlight streaming through the windows, creating an ethereal quality that made the space feel both sacred and forlorn. He paused in the living room, his eyes tracing the outline of the old armchair where his grandfather used to sit, reading the newspaper or recounting tales of his youth during the war. With a sigh, Matthew ventured upstairs, drawn by an inexplicable pull toward the attic, a place he hadn't explored since childhood. The wooden stairs creaked under his weight, and as he reached the top, a wave of nostalgia washed over him. The attic was a treasure trove of forgotten items, old toys, faded photographs, and dusty furniture, all cloaked in a shroud of neglect. As he navigated the cramped space, his fingers brushed against various objects, each evoking a memory. The rickety bicycle he learned to ride, the trunk filled with his childhood books. But it was something else that caught his eye, an old wooden chest tucked away in the corner, partially hidden beneath a moth-eaten quilt. Intrigued, he pulled it into the light, dust swirling around him like ghosts of the past. "Why didn't I ever look up here?" Matthew muttered to himself, his voice barely breaking the silence. Kneeling beside the chest, his heart raced with anticipation. The wood was worn and splintered, yet it held an air of mystery. He lifted the latch, which creaked in protest, and opened the chest to reveal its contents. A stack of journals, neatly tied with a fraying ribbon, along with an assortment of yellowed letters and photographs. He carefully untied the ribbon and opened the first journal, its pages brittle yet filled with elegant handwriting. The first entry was dated June 1944. Matthew's heart quickened as he realized he was about to delve into the life of his grandfather, a man who had seen things that most only read about in history books. As he began to read, the words leaped off the page, painting vivid images of his grandfather's youth. Grandpa Henry described a time of uncertainty and fear, detailing the sights and sounds of war, the distant rumble of artillery, the cries of fallen comrades, and the harsh realities of life on the front lines. The stark contrast between the innocent boy he once was and the soldier he had become resonated deeply within Matthew. In one entry, Grandpa Henry recounted the day he received his draft notice. He had been sitting under the old oak tree in their backyard, the sun filtering through the leaves, when the letter arrived. "Mom," he had called out, his voice trembling, "I got my draft letter today." "What does that mean, Henry?" his mother had replied, concern etched on her face as she wiped her hands on her apron. "It means I'm going to war," he had whispered, the weight of the words hanging heavily in the air. Matthew could almost see the scene unfold. A young man, full of dreams, suddenly thrust into a world of chaos. He could feel the weight of that moment, the heartache, the confusion, and the looming specter of duty. It was a stark reminder that life could change in an instant, shattering the illusion of safety and comfort. As he turned the pages, the entries became increasingly poignant, filled with the raw emotions of fear, bravery, and camaraderie. Grandpa Henry wrote about his friendships forged in the trenches, moments of laughter amid the horrors, and the bittersweet memories of home that kept his spirit alive. Matthew felt a connection to this man he had loved and admired, yet only truly began to know through these intimate reflections. "Remember that time we snuck out to watch the stars?" Matthew recalled his grandfather saying one summer night. "We laid on the roof and talked about what we'd do when we grew up. We thought we'd be invincible," Matthew whispered, a small smile breaking through his sorrow. Hours slipped by as Matthew immersed himself in the stories, the world outside fading into the background. He laughed at his grandfather's lighthearted anecdotes, and wept for the pain and loss that punctuated his journey. Each word was a testament to resilience, a reminder that even in the darkest times, there existed a flicker of hope and humanity. Finally, as the last rays of sunlight dwindled, Matthew closed the journal, his heart full but heavy with the weight of what he had discovered. He realized that the legacy of Grandpa Henry extended far beyond the confines of the past. It was a call to remember, to honor, and to find his own path amidst the shadows. With newfound resolve, Matthew took a deep breath, the dust of the attic swirling around him like a cloak of memories. He knew he had stumbled upon something profound, a journey that would not only unveil the depths of his grandfather's courage, but also guide him toward understanding his own identity. The attic, once a place of forgotten things, had become a sanctuary of discovery, igniting a spark that would propel him forward. As he descended the stairs, the night enveloped Millfield in darkness. Yet within Matthew, a flicker of light began to grow, a beacon of hope kindled by the whispered stories of the past, urging him to embrace the future with the same bravery that his grandfather had shown in the face of unimaginable adversity. The morning sun spilled into Matthew's bedroom, illuminating the dust motes that danced lazily in the air. He awoke with the remnants of last night's revelations lingering in his mind. The journals lay open on his desk, the words of Grandpa Henry echoing in his thoughts. With a sense of purpose stirring within him, he decided to revisit the attic and delve deeper into the memories contained within those pages. After a quick breakfast of toast and coffee, Matthew made his way back upstairs. The old wooden stairs creaked under his feet, almost as if they were whispering stories of their own. The attic, now bathed in the soft morning light, felt like a sanctuary, a space where the past and present converged. He settled into a small corner, surrounded by the remnants of his childhood and the untold stories of his grandfather. Picking up the journal again, he was drawn to an entry dated July 1944, just a month after his grandfather had joined the army. As he read, he was transported back to a time when the world was engulfed in chaos. Grandpa Henry described a rainy night in a foreign land, the sounds of distant explosions mingling with the patter of raindrops against the canvas of their makeshift tents. "Tonight, as I lay here listening to the rain, I can't help but think of home," he wrote. "The scent of my mother's apple pie still lingers in my mind, warm and sweet. I can almost hear her calling me for dinner, her voice cutting through the darkness like a beacon." Matthew paused, closing his eyes for a moment to imagine the scene. He could almost smell the pie, the warmth of the kitchen enveloping him like a hug. "I miss my family more than I can say," the entry continued. "Each day I fight not just for my country, but for the memories we shared, the dreams we built together. I often find myself wondering if I'll ever return to that life, to the laughter, the love. My comrades, Daniel, Lucas, and Thomas, are my brothers now. Together we face the terror of the night, holding on to each other, whispering stories of the girls we left behind." A soft smile spread across Matthew's face as he imagined his grandfather huddled under a blanket with his friends, sharing dreams and hopes amidst the horrors of war. Suddenly, a noise broke his reverie. The sound of the front door creaking open drew his attention. "Mom, is that you?" Matthew called out, closing the journal and setting it aside. "Yes, it's me." His mother's voice echoed up the stairs. "I thought I'd come by to check on you." Matthew quickly tidied up the attic, stuffing the journals back into the chest. He didn't want to share everything just yet. Some memories felt too sacred, too personal. As he descended the stairs, he felt a mix of excitement and apprehension. And when he reached the living room, he found his mother, Laura, setting down a bouquet of flowers on the table. Her eyes, once vibrant and full of life, now carried the weight of grief, and Matthew felt a pang of sympathy for her. "Hey, how are you holding up?" she asked, her voice soft but steady as she turned to him. "I'm okay, just looking through some things," Matthew replied, not wanting to reveal too much. "Your grandfather had such a rich life, you know. I'm glad you're taking the time to remember him." She smiled wistfully, her gaze drifting to a framed photograph of Henry on the mantelpiece, a man full of laughter and love. "Yeah, he really did," Matthew said, feeling a lump form in his throat. "I found his journals in the attic." "His journals?" Laura's interest piqued. I didn't know he had kept any. Yeah, there are several of them. He wrote about his time in the war, some pretty intense stuff. Matthew hesitated, sensing the weight of their conversation. He wrote about missing you and the family. Laura's eyes glistened with unshed tears. He loved us fiercely, even in those dark times. Your grandfather was a brave man, Matthew. I wish I had known more about what he went through. You should read them with me, Matthew suggested, surprising himself with the idea. We could share the memories together. I'd like that, she nodded, her smile returning. It might help both of us heal. They spent the rest of the afternoon together in the living room, poring over the journals. Each entry sparked stories and reflections, intertwining their lives with the past. Matthew watched as his mother laughed softly at Grandpa Henry's humorous observations, her face lighting up as she recalled old family tales. Oh, I remember when he tried to teach me to ride a bike, Laura chuckled. He was so patient with me, even when I kept falling off. Yeah, he told me about that, Matthew replied, his heart warming at the thought of those cherished moments. He said you were a natural once you got the hang of it. As they shared their memories, Matthew felt a deepening connection to his mother, a bond forged through the legacy of love that Grandpa Henry had left behind. Just then, Laura looked at her son with a contemplative expression. Matthew, can I share something with you? She asked, her tone shifting. Of course, Mom. What is it? There are some things your grandfather never spoke about, things that haunted him, she said, her voice lowering. The war changed him in ways I still don't fully understand. He was always so strong, but there were shadows in his eyes. Matthew felt a shiver run down his spine. What do you mean? I mean that while he was brave on the outside, he carried burdens within him, she continued, her gaze distant, as if recalling a painful memory. He lost friends, dear friends. He rarely talked about those who didn't make it back, and I think that's something that weighed heavily on him. A silence fell between them, thick with the gravity of her words. Matthew's heart ached for the man he thought he knew so well, realizing there were depths to his grandfather's experiences that remained unspoken. Do you think I should ask him about those things? Matthew ventured, his voice barely above a whisper. I think it's important to honor those memories, Laura replied, her eyes meeting his with a knowing look. But tread carefully. It can be difficult to relive those moments. Matthew nodded, understanding the delicate nature of their conversation. The road ahead promised to be one of discovery, fraught with both joy and pain. As they resumed reading, he felt an overwhelming sense of purpose. He would not shy away from the shadows of his grandfather's past, but would embrace them, forging a connection that transcended time. The afternoon sun began to set, casting long shadows across the living room, and with every word they read, Matthew realized they were not just uncovering the past, they were creating their own narrative, a story of resilience, love, and the power of memory that would carry them forward together. The next day dawned bright and crisp, the kind of morning that felt alive with possibility. Matthew awoke with the journal still fresh in his mind, a sense of urgency compelling him to dive deeper into his grandfather's past. After breakfast, he made his way to the attic again, where he had left the journals neatly stacked in the old wooden chest. As he settled into the dusty corner, he felt the familiar thrill of discovery wash over him. He reached for the journal dated August 1944, a month after his grandfather's harrowing experiences in battle. As he opened it, the faint smell of aged paper filled the air, igniting memories of his own childhood, when he would listen to Grandpa Henry's stories by the fireplace. Dear God, how did we get here? Henry had written, his penmanship shaky yet elegant. We thought we were invincible, that the world would change for the better. But every day is a reminder of the fragility of life. Today we lost one of our own, Lucas, the jokester of the group. He was just 20 years old. Matthew's heart ached at the thought of his grandfather grappling with such loss. He could almost hear Henry's voice trembling as he recounted that day. I can still hear his laughter echoing in the barracks. He made us forget, even if for a moment, that we were in hell. I never imagined I would witness such darkness so young. The entry detailed how Grandpa Henry had taken it upon himself to honor Lucas's memory. He described a makeshift memorial they created in the forest, a simple cross made from branches adorned with wildflowers. It felt right to give him a proper goodbye, Henry had written. I promised myself to always remember him, to share his story with anyone who would listen. Matthew's mind raced. He had always known his grandfather as a strong man, but these words revealed the weight of grief he had carried silently. He felt an overwhelming urge to honor that promise himself. "Mom," he called, his voice echoing through the house. "Can you come here for a second?" Laura appeared moments later, a curious expression on her face. "What is it, Matthew?" "I just read something powerful in Grandpa's journal. He wrote about losing a friend named Lucas and how he created a memorial for him in the woods." Laura's eyes widened with intrigue. "That sounds beautiful. Did he say where?" "No, but I think we should find it," Matthew suggested, his heart racing with excitement. "Maybe we can make a new memorial for Lucas together." "I love that idea," she replied, a soft smile breaking through her lingering sadness. "It could be a way to honor not just Lucas, but all the men who served with your grandfather." That afternoon, armed with the journal and a renewed sense of purpose, Matthew and Laura set out to locate the memorial Grandpa Henry had created. They wandered through the nearby woods, the trees standing tall and proud like sentinels, their leaves whispering in the gentle breeze. "Can you imagine what it must have been like for him?" Laura mused, her eyes scanning the surroundings. "To feel so lost, yet still find a way to honor his friend?" "Yeah," Matthew replied, his mind racing with thoughts. "It's like he took that pain and turned it into something beautiful." As they trekked deeper into the forest, Matthew recalled snippets from the journal, how the woods had felt alive, echoing with the laughter of his grandfather and his friends, moments of respite amid the horrors of war. "Do you think we'll find it?" Laura asked, her voice filled with hope and uncertainty. "I think we will," Matthew said confidently. He wouldn't have just left it behind. It meant too much to him. After what felt like hours of searching, they stumbled upon a small clearing. In the center stood a solitary tree, its branches reaching skyward like arms in prayer. Beneath its shade, Matthew spotted a pile of stones, carefully arranged into a rough circle. "Is this it?" Laura breathed, her eyes glistening with emotion. Matthew stepped closer, heart pounding in his chest. "It has to be," he murmured, kneeling beside the makeshift memorial. The stones were worn, each one a testament to the passage of time, and wildflowers peeked through the cracks, vibrant against the earthy backdrop. "This is beautiful," Laura said softly, kneeling next to him. "He must have come here often." As they sat in silence, the gravity of the moment enveloped them. Matthew felt a deep connection to his grandfather, the weight of his sacrifices settling in his heart. "Let's add something of our own," he suggested, reaching into his pocket. He pulled out a small, polished stone he had collected from home, its surface smooth and glistening in the dappled sunlight. "This can be for Lucas," he said, placing it gently among the stones. Laura nodded, her eyes shimmering with tears. She took a deep breath, reaching for a small flower she had picked earlier. "And this is for Grandpa Henry," she said, laying the delicate blossom on the stones. "For all the memories he carried." They sat together in quiet reflection, the world around them fading as they honored the past. In that moment, they felt a sense of peace, knowing they were keeping the memory of their loved ones alive. As the sun began to dip below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange, Matthew whispered a promise to himself and to the spirits of those who had come before him. He would carry their stories, their memories, and honor the legacy of love and resilience that had shaped their lives. With a final glance at the memorial, they made their way back through the woods, hearts lighter, spirits lifted. Matthew felt a sense of purpose blooming within him, a desire to not only understand his grandfather's past, but to share it, to weave their stories into the fabric of the future. In the days that followed, Matthew and Laura became more engrossed in the stories contained within Grandpa Henry's journals. Each entry unveiled a new layer of the man they had loved, a man shaped by the trials of war and the enduring bonds of friendship. One afternoon, while flipping through the worn pages, Matthew stumbled upon an entry dated September 1944. It spoke of a decisive battle, one that would leave an indelible mark on his grandfather's heart. "Today was unlike any other," Henry had written. "We were ambushed in the early hours of the morning. The air was thick with tension as we prepared for what lay ahead. My hands trembled as I clutched my rifle, the weight of it a stark reminder of the responsibility I bore." Matthew felt a shiver run down his spine, as if the very essence of that moment seeped through the pages. He imagined his grandfather, a young man caught in the maelstrom of violence, surrounded by the sounds of chaos. "We were outnumbered," the entry continued. "The enemy was ruthless, and we fought with everything we had. In the heat of battle, I saw Daniel fall. It was as if time slowed. One moment he was beside me, and the next he was gone." Laura leaned in closer, her breath hitching as she read the words aloud. "I could hear him laughing just hours before, his voice cutting through the tension. Now that laughter has been silenced forever. I can't shake the feeling of guilt. I promised him I would protect him." Tears welled in Matthew's eyes as he processed the weight of his grandfather's anguish. He carried that guilt with him, he murmured, heart aching for the pain his grandfather had endured. "That's a heavy burden for anyone," Laura said softly, placing a comforting hand on Matthew's shoulder. "He lost so many friends." "But he also found ways to honor them," Matthew replied, his determination solidifying. "We need to keep sharing his story to show how important it is to remember those who fought and fell." That evening, as the sun set over Millfield, casting a warm glow across the living room, Matthew and Laura discussed their plan. They wanted to create a small tribute, something that would not only honor Grandpa Henry's memory, but also bring awareness to the sacrifices made by countless soldiers. "We could organize a community event," Matthew suggested, his excitement bubbling over. "We could invite veterans and their families to share their stories, to remember those they've lost, maybe even create a small memorial in town." Laura's eyes sparkled with approval. "That sounds perfect. We could use some of Grandpa's journals as a foundation for the stories. It would give people a chance to connect with the past." Over the next few weeks, they worked tirelessly, reaching out to local veterans organizations and gathering support from the community. Word spread quickly, and soon they found themselves organizing a gathering at the town square, a place where generations of families had come together to celebrate life. On the day of the event, the air was filled with a mix of excitement and somber reflection. Banners adorned with the names of fallen soldiers flapped gently in the breeze, while tables displayed photographs and memorabilia. The atmosphere was charged with emotion, a blend of nostalgia and hope. As the community gathered, Matthew felt a surge of pride. They had transformed their grief into a celebration of resilience, honoring the legacy of Grandpa Henry and his comrades. "Welcome, everyone," Matthew began, his voice steady despite the butterflies in his stomach. "Thank you for joining us today as we honor the memories of those who served our country. We gather not only to remember their sacrifices, but to share their stories, to keep their spirits alive in our hearts." As he spoke, he noticed the faces in the crowd. Some were familiar, others were strangers, but each shared a common thread, the bond of love and remembrance. Laura stood beside him, her eyes shining with tears as she held one of Grandpa Henry's journals. "My father wrote about the importance of friendship during wartime. He understood that, even in the darkest moments, love and laughter could prevail." As the event unfolded, veterans took turns sharing their stories, recounting tales of camaraderie and loss, laughter and tears. The air crackled with emotion as Matthew listened intently, feeling the weight of history pressing down around him. One veteran, Mr. Collins, spoke about his own experiences in the war. "I lost many friends, just like Henry did," he said, his voice cracking. "But their memories live on in us. We owe it to them to remember, to share their stories, and to teach the next generation the value of sacrifice." Matthew felt a profound connection to each story, each name that was spoken aloud. The event transformed from a simple gathering into a powerful tribute, an affirmation of love and resilience in the face of adversity. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the town square, Matthew glanced at Laura, who stood beside him, her hand clasped tightly in his. "We did this together," he whispered, his heart swelling with gratitude. "We honored them," she replied, her eyes glistening, "and will continue to do so." As the final speaker concluded, the crowd erupted into applause, a collective acknowledgement of the power of memory. Matthew felt a sense of fulfillment wash over him, a deep understanding that the stories of the past were not just remnants to be forgotten, but legacies to be cherished. And in that moment, he realized that the journey he had embarked on was not just about uncovering his grandfather's past, it was about embracing the future with courage, empathy, and love. The shadows of war might linger, but within those shadows, they had found light, a guiding force that would lead them forward. In the weeks following the community event, Matthew felt a sense of purpose he had never experienced before. The outpouring of support and connection with others had rekindled a fire within him, one that drove him to learn more about his grandfather's past and to help others who were affected by the scars of war. One afternoon, as Matthew flipped through another of Grandpa Henry's journals, he came across an entry dated December 1944. The words danced before his eyes, revealing a profound shift in his grandfather's perspective. "Christmas is upon us, yet the weight of sorrow hangs heavier than ever. We are miles away from home, separated by an ocean and countless battles. But in the midst of despair, we have found a way to celebrate. We gathered as a battalion, sharing memories of home and laughter, even as the shadows of war loomed large around us." Matthew could feel the chill of winter seeping into the very essence of those words. Yet there was also a warmth, a resilience that permeated the page. His grandfather described how the men had banded together to create a semblance of home. They crafted decorations from scraps of wood and fashioned makeshift ornaments from whatever they could find. "We sang carols," Henry wrote. "Each note resonated with the longing for home, a reminder that love transcends even the darkest nights. In that moment, we were not soldiers but friends, bound together by hope in the spirit of Christmas." As Matthew read, he imagined the scene unfolding, the camaraderie, the laughter, and the shared dreams of a brighter tomorrow. He felt inspired by the strength of his grandfather's spirit and his ability to find light amidst the darkness. "Mom!" he called, excitement bubbling within him. "You have to read this." Laura entered the room, her eyes curious. "What did you find this time?" "This entry is about Christmas during the war," he said, holding out the journal for her to see. Grandpa and his friends created their own celebration, despite everything they were going through. She leaned in, her face softening as she read. "It's amazing how they managed to find joy in such a bleak situation," Laura remarked, her voice filled with admiration. "Your grandfather had such a remarkable ability to lift spirits." "That's what I want to do too," Matthew replied, a sense of determination flooding through him. "I want to share this story to remind people that even in tough times, there's always a glimmer of hope." "Maybe we can do something special for the next holiday season," Laura suggested, her eyes lighting up with inspiration. "We could organize a community event centered around hope and resilience, just like he did." "I love that idea," Matthew exclaimed. "We can invite veterans and their families to share their own stories of light during dark times." Over the next few weeks, they began planning the event, focusing on themes of hope, community, and connection. They reached out to local veterans organizations, inviting them to participate and share their experiences. As Christmas approached, the anticipation built within the town. Matthew and Laura worked tirelessly, decorating the town square with lights, banners, and ornaments that mirrored the spirit of the season. On the day of the event, the air was electric with excitement. Families gathered, children laughing and playing, their joy infectious. The sun began to set, casting a warm glow across the square, and the twinkling lights illuminated the faces of those who had come to honor their loved ones. "Welcome, everyone," Matthew began, his voice ringing out over the crowd. "Today we gather to celebrate hope and resilience. Just like my grandfather did during the war, we want to remind each other that even in our darkest moments, there is always light to be found." As the festivities unfolded, veterans shared their stories of perseverance, laughter mingling with tears. One veteran spoke of how his unit had come together during the holidays, much like Grandpa Henry had described, creating moments of joy amidst the chaos of war. "I remember that Christmas," he said, his eyes shining with nostalgia. "We made do with what we had, turning ration packs into feasts and laughter into memories. Those moments kept us going." The crowd erupted into applause, and Matthew felt a sense of fulfillment wash over him. They were not just remembering the past, they were creating a community bound by shared experiences, united in their understanding of love, loss, and hope. As the evening wore on, Matthew glanced at Laura, who stood beside him, her face illuminated by the twinkling lights. "We did it," he said, a smile breaking across his face. "We honored Grandpa's memory." "Yes, we did," she replied, her eyes sparkling. "And we brought people together in the process. That's what it's all about." As the final notes of a carol echoed through the square, Matthew felt a warmth spreading through him. The legacy of his grandfather had transformed into something beautiful, a reminder that even in the shadows of the past, the light of hope could shine through, guiding them toward a brighter future. As the holiday season drew to a close, Matthew and Laura found themselves basking in the warmth of their community's support. The event they had organized was a resounding success, and the stories shared lingered in the air like the scent of freshly baked cookies. One chilly afternoon, while Matthew was sorting through more of Grandpa Henry's journals, he received an unexpected phone call. It was Mr. Thompson, the veteran they had met at the memorial. "Matthew, my boy," Mr. Thompson's voice was warm and inviting. "I hope you're well. I've been thinking about the event you organized. It was truly something special." "Thank you, Mr. Thompson," Matthew replied, feeling a swell of gratitude. "We wanted to honor the memories of those who served, just like Grandpa did." "I'd like to share something with you," Mr. Thompson continued, his tone shifting slightly. "I've been holding on to some letters that your grandfather wrote during the war. They're quite personal, and I think you should have them." Matthew's heart raced. "Letters? From Grandpa?" "Yes, he sent them to me during our time together. They detail his experiences, his hopes, and even some of the pain he felt. I believe they could offer you a deeper understanding of what he went through." "Of course! I'd love to see them," Matthew said, excitement bubbling within him. "When can I pick them up?" "Why don't you come by this weekend? I can share some stories while you're here. It would be nice to reminisce about old times," Mr. Thompson suggested. "Sounds perfect. I'll see you then," Matthew replied, feeling a sense of anticipation building within him. That weekend, he arrived at Mr. Thompson's house, a modest yet inviting home adorned with a small garden. The elderly man greeted him with a warm smile, his eyes twinkling with memories. "Welcome, my boy. Come in, come in." Mr. Thompson ushered Matthew inside, leading him to a cozy living room filled with photographs and mementos from his time in the service. "I've kept these letters safe all these years," he said, reaching into a drawer and pulling out a weathered envelope. "Your grandfather's words meant a lot to me, and I think it's time you read them." As Mr. Thompson handed over the envelope, Matthew's hands trembled slightly. "Thank you for keeping these," he said, his voice filled with emotion. "Henry was a good man and a good friend," Mr. Thompson replied, his expression solemn. "These letters reflect not just his struggles, but his heart." Matthew carefully opened the envelope, pulling out a stack of letters, the paper fragile yet filled with his grandfather's familiar handwriting. He felt as though he were holding a piece of history, a connection to the man who had shaped so much of his life. The first letter was dated October 1944. "Dear Tom," it began, "I hope this letter finds you well. The days have blurred together, but I find solace in the thought of our friendship and the good times we shared back home." As he read, Matthew felt the weight of his grandfather's words. Grandpa Henry wrote about the fear and uncertainty that gripped him during the war, but also expressed gratitude for the friendships he had forged in the trenches. "Even in the darkest moments, we find light in one another," Henry had written. "Daniel and I often reminisce about the days spent fishing by the river. Those memories keep us grounded." Matthew glanced up at Mr. Thompson, who was watching him with a knowing expression. Those memories were his anchor, Mr. Thompson said softly. When the world felt chaotic, he held on to them tightly. Did he ever mention how he felt about the war? Matthew asked, curious to learn more. Mr. Thompson nodded. He wrote about it, but it was never easy for him to share. The burdens of loss weighed heavily on him. But through it all, he found strength in his friends and in the love he held for his family. Matthew continued reading, each letter revealing more of his grandfather's struggles and triumphs. One letter spoke of a particularly harrowing day in the trenches. "We faced an onslaught," Henry wrote. "It was chaos, and for a moment, I thought we wouldn't make it. But in the midst of despair, I caught sight of Daniel, his determination reminding me that we were not alone. We had each other." Tears prickled at the corners of Matthew's eyes as he realized how deeply his grandfather had valued the bonds of friendship. He could feel the weight of those friendships even decades later, the loyalty and camaraderie that had provided solace amidst the horrors of war. As he finished reading the letters, Matthew looked up at Mr. Thompson, his heart full. "Thank you for sharing these. They mean the world to me." "Henry's legacy lives on through you," Mr. Thompson replied, a proud smile gracing his lips. "He would be proud of the man you've become." They spent the rest of the afternoon sharing stories, laughter mingling with memories of their loved ones. Matthew felt a renewed sense of purpose, realizing that the legacy of his grandfather extended beyond the pages of the journal. It was alive in the hearts of those who had known him. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in vibrant hues, Matthew left Mr. Thompson's house with the letters safely tucked under his arm. He felt a deep sense of connection to his grandfather, a bond that transcended time. He understood now that the journey he was on was not just about uncovering the past, but about carrying that legacy forward, sharing it with the world, and ensuring that the stories of love, resilience, and hope would never fade into darkness. With the letters from Mr. Thompson still fresh in his mind, Matthew spent the next few days reflecting on the words of his grandfather. The insights he had gained deepened his appreciation for the complexities of his grandfather's experiences, and he felt more determined than ever to share those stories with others. One evening, while sitting in his room, Matthew glanced at the stack of letters on his desk, their edges frayed yet filled with life. He picked one up, a letter dated November 1944, and began to read. "Dear Tom, today we buried Daniel," Henry had written. "The pain is unbearable. I keep replaying the moments in my mind, wishing I could have done something, anything to save him. We were brothers, forged in the fires of war. To lose him feels like losing a piece of myself." Matthew's heart sank as he read those words, feeling the weight of grief that had enveloped his grandfather. He could almost hear the tremor in his voice, the sorrow that had clung to him for years. "I remember the day we met," Henry continued. "We were both so young, scared yet hopeful. He told me about his dreams of becoming a teacher, of shaping young minds. I never imagined I would be here, writing this letter, grieving for my brother in arms." Tears streamed down Matthew's face as he absorbed the depth of his grandfather's emotions. He felt a surge of empathy for the young soldier who had faced unimaginable horrors, who had lost friends yet still held on to hope for a better tomorrow. "Even in the face of despair, I choose to remember the laughter we shared, the dreams we built together," Henry wrote. "I owe it to him to keep living, to carry his spirit with me." As Matthew finished the letter, he realized that it was not just a reflection of grief. It was a testament to resilience and the power of memory. His grandfather had taken the pain of loss and transformed it into a commitment to honor those who had fallen. Inspired by the profound depth of his grandfather's words, Matthew decided to do something meaningful. He wanted to gather stories from other veterans in their community, stories of loss, love, and survival. He envisioned a collection that would capture the essence of their experiences, much like his grandfather had done through his letters. "Mom!" he called, rushing down the stairs. "I have an idea!" Laura emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a dish towel. "What is it, Matthew?" "I want to collect stories from veterans. Our community has so many incredible people with experiences that deserve to be shared. I think we could publish them, like a book or a collection. Laura's eyes lit up with excitement. That's a wonderful idea. It could be a tribute to their courage and resilience, just like your grandfather did with his letters. Matthew felt a surge of motivation. We could hold an event where veterans can come and share their stories. We could invite the community to listen and learn from their experiences. Over the next few weeks, they worked tirelessly, reaching out to veterans, gathering their stories, and encouraging them to share their experiences. As they listened to the tales of bravery and sacrifice, Matthew was moved by the camaraderie that had developed among those who had served. One evening, they hosted a gathering at the town hall, inviting veterans and their families to share their stories. The atmosphere was charged with emotion as the community filled the room, eager to hear from those who had faced the trials of war. As veterans took the stage, Matthew listened intently. Each story was unique, yet a common thread of resilience and hope connected them all. Some spoke of their experiences in combat, while others shared the challenges they faced returning home, trying to adjust to life after the war. "Thank you for your courage and for sharing your stories," Matthew said, standing before the crowd at the end of the event. "Your experiences shape who we are as a community, and it's vital that we honor and remember those who fought for our freedoms." As the applause filled the room, Matthew felt a deep sense of fulfillment. He had witnessed the power of storytelling, how it could heal wounds and forge connections among individuals. The community had come together, united by shared experiences and a commitment to honor the past. In the weeks that followed, Matthew compiled the stories into a collection, intertwining them with excerpts from his grandfather's letters. As he worked, he felt a sense of purpose growing within him, a desire to ensure that the legacies of these brave individuals would never be forgotten. As the final touches were made to the manuscript, Matthew felt a deep connection to his grandfather, a connection that transcended time and space. He understood now that their journeys were intertwined, that the stories they shared were a reflection of love, loss, and resilience. On the day of the book launch, the town gathered once again, eager to celebrate the culmination of Matthew's efforts. The venue was adorned with photographs and memorabilia from the veterans' stories, creating a tapestry of shared experiences. As Matthew stood at the front, holding the first copy of the book in his hands, he felt a rush of emotion. "This collection is not just about war. It's about the heart," he began. "It's about love, sacrifice, and the enduring spirit of those who fought for us. It's a tribute to my grandfather and all the men and women who served." The room erupted in applause, and Matthew felt a warmth spread through him. He had honored his grandfather's memory and given a voice to those who had long been silent. As he signed copies of the book, he noticed Mr. Thompson in the crowd, tears glistening in his eyes. "You've done a remarkable job, Matthew," he said, his voice filled with pride. "Your grandfather would be incredibly proud." "I couldn't have done it without his inspiration," Matthew replied, feeling a surge of gratitude. "Thank you for sharing his letters and stories with me." As the evening unfolded, Matthew felt a profound sense of connection to his community and to his grandfather. The legacy of love, resilience, and hope would continue to resonate, not only in the pages of the book, but in the hearts of those who had gathered. As the last guest departed, Matthew glanced at the book once more, knowing that it represented not just a collection of stories, but a commitment to honor the past and embrace the future. With the book launch behind him, Matthew felt a newfound sense of direction. The stories he had collected had not only honored his grandfather's legacy, but had also ignited a passion within him to continue sharing the narratives of those who had shaped their world. One chilly afternoon, as snowflakes began to blanket Millfield, Matthew sat by the fireplace sipping hot cocoa. He glanced at the book resting on the table, its cover adorned with photographs of the veterans. It was a tangible representation of the journeys they had undertaken, and he felt proud of what they had accomplished. "Mom, I was thinking," he said, turning to Laura, who was curled up on the couch with a book. "What if we organize a series of workshops for veterans? We could create a space where they can express themselves, share their stories, and help each other heal." Laura looked up, her eyes brightening with excitement. "That's a fantastic idea. Writing can be such a powerful tool for healing. We could invite local writers and therapists to facilitate the workshops." Matthew nodded, enthusiasm bubbling within him. We could focus on different aspects of their experiences: loss, resilience, hope, and give them a platform to connect with one another. Over the next few weeks, they worked tirelessly to organize the workshops, reaching out to veterans, mental health professionals, and local writers. They created a safe environment where participants could share their stories and support one another through the challenges they faced. As the first workshop day arrived, the atmosphere buzzed with anticipation. The community center was filled with veterans of all ages, some accompanied by family members. Matthew felt a mix of nerves and excitement as he welcomed everyone. "Thank you all for being here today," he began, his voice steady. "This space is a place of healing, connection, and understanding. Together we will share our stories and create a tapestry of resilience that honors our experiences." The workshop began with icebreaker activities, allowing participants to introduce themselves and share a bit about their journey. Matthew watched as bonds began to form, laughter mingling with stories of pain and healing. As the day unfolded, veterans took turns sharing their narratives. One veteran, Mr. Anderson, spoke about his struggles returning home after combat. "I felt like a ghost in my own life," he admitted, his voice trembling. "I didn't know how to reconnect with my family, how to share what I had seen." "I felt that way too," another veteran, Sarah, chimed in. "It took me years to find my voice again after losing my friends." Matthew felt a surge of empathy as he listened to their stories, understanding that the journey of healing was not one they had to face alone. They were forging connections, creating a sense of camaraderie that resonated deeply within the room. As the day drew to a close, participants shared reflections on their experiences. "Thank you for creating this space," Mr. Anderson said, his eyes glistening with gratitude. "It feels good to talk about things I've kept bottled up for so long." Matthew smiled, feeling a sense of fulfillment wash over him. "Your stories matter, and they deserve to be heard." As the workshop continued over the coming weeks, Matthew saw profound transformations take place. Veterans began to open up, share their narratives, and find strength in one another's experiences. The bonds they formed echoed the spirit of brotherhood that Grandpa Henry had valued so deeply. One afternoon, Sarah approached Matthew after a session, her expression serious. "I've been thinking about what you're doing here," she said. "It's important work. Have you considered creating a community group to keep this going?" Matthew paused, the idea sparking in his mind. "What do you mean?" "I mean, we could establish a support group, a safe space for veterans to come together regularly, to share their stories and help each other heal," Sarah suggested. "I love that idea," Matthew replied, excitement bubbling within him. "We could meet monthly, invite guest speakers, and continue to foster this sense of community." With Sarah's encouragement, Matthew and Laura began organizing the support group, reaching out to local veterans and their families. As they laid the groundwork, they felt a sense of purpose guiding them, a commitment to honoring the experiences of those who had served. As winter melted into spring, the community group blossomed, drawing veterans from all walks of life. They gathered in the community center, sharing stories of resilience, love, and healing. Matthew watched in awe as friendships blossomed, laughter filled the room, and the shadows of the past began to lift. The support group became a sanctuary, a place where veterans could share their burdens and find solace in one another. One evening, as the group concluded, Matthew stood up, feeling overwhelmed with gratitude. "Thank you all for being here tonight," he said, his heart swelling. "Your courage to share your stories inspires us all. Together, we're creating a legacy of resilience, just like my grandfather did." As the group dispersed, Matthew felt a renewed sense of purpose. He had not only honored his grandfather's memory, but had also created a lasting impact in the community, a legacy of love, hope, and healing that would endure for generations to come. As the seasons changed, the support group continued to flourish, drawing more veterans and their families into its fold. Matthew and Laura had established a rhythm, creating a nurturing environment that felt like a second home for those seeking connection and understanding. One evening, as they prepared for the group meeting, Laura glanced at Matthew, a contemplative expression on her face. "You know, I've been thinking about how much this group has grown. It's incredible to see the bonds that have formed." Matthew nodded, watching as veterans filtered into the room, smiles and laughter filling the air. It's amazing. I never expected it to have such a profound impact. Me neither, Laura replied, her eyes shining with pride. You've done something truly special here, Matthew. You've given them a platform to share their stories and connect with one another. As the meeting began, Matthew stood before the group, feeling a sense of camaraderie among them. Welcome, everyone. I'm so glad you're all here tonight. I want to take a moment to celebrate how far we've come together. The stories shared in this space have built a community rooted in support and understanding. As he spoke, Matthew noticed Sarah seated in the front row, her expression serious yet thoughtful. I've been reflecting on my journey, she said when it was her turn to speak. When I first joined this group, I was struggling to find my voice. But now I feel stronger than ever. I owe that to all of you. The group erupted into applause, and Matthew felt a swell of pride. The transformation he had witnessed in Sarah and others was a testament to the power of sharing one's story. Later that evening, as the meeting wrapped up, Matthew approached Sarah. Your words were inspiring tonight, he said. I'm so glad you feel empowered. Thank you, Matthew. I've been thinking about what we can do next, she replied, a glint of excitement in her eyes. What if we organize a community project? Something that gives back to veterans and their families, just like what you did with the book. Matthew's mind raced with possibilities. That's a fantastic idea. We could create care packages for veterans or organize a community service day. Exactly, Sarah exclaimed. We could involve local businesses and encourage everyone to participate. It would be a great way to honor those who served while fostering community spirit. As they brainstormed ideas, Matthew felt a surge of enthusiasm. He knew that giving back to the community would not only benefit those in need, but would also strengthen the bonds formed within the support group. Over the following weeks, they worked tirelessly to organize the community project. They reached out to local businesses for support, collecting donations of essential items and supplies for care packages. Flyers went up around town, inviting residents to join in the effort and contribute to the cause. On the day of the event, the community center buzzed with activity. Volunteers filled the room, sorting items and assembling care packages that would be delivered to veterans in the area. Matthew watched as laughter and camaraderie blossomed among the participants, the spirit of giving palpable in the air. Look at all of this, Laura said, her eyes wide with wonder. I never imagined we'd have this much support. It's incredible, Matthew replied, feeling a sense of pride swell within him. It shows how much our community cares. As they worked side by side, Matthew felt a deep sense of connection to those around him. Each package they assembled represented not just physical support, but an acknowledgement of the sacrifices made by veterans and their families. Later that afternoon, they loaded the care packages into vehicles, ready to deliver them to veterans' homes and organizations. As they drove through Millfield, Matthew marveled at the sense of unity that had blossomed in their town. At their final stop, they visited the local veterans' home, where residents gathered in a cozy common area. Matthew felt a wave of emotion wash over him as they entered, greeted by smiles and warm welcomes. Thank you all for being here, one of the veterans, Mr. Jenkins said, his voice filled with gratitude. This means so much to us. As they distributed the care packages, Matthew watched as the faces of the residents lit up with joy. They shared stories of their experiences, laughter mingling with heartfelt gratitude. I remember when we were in the trenches, Mr. Jenkins shared with a twinkle in his eye. We made do with what little we had, but it was the camaraderie that kept us going. Matthew felt a deep connection to the stories being shared, realizing that the bonds forged in war echoed through the decades, bringing generations together. As the day came to a close, Matthew reflected on the impact of their efforts. The support group had transformed from a small gathering into a powerful force for change within the community. The connections made, the stories shared, and the love fostered had created a legacy that would endure. Standing outside the veterans' home, Matthew glanced at Laura, whose smile mirrored his own. We did something meaningful today, he said, feeling a sense of fulfillment. Yes, we did, she replied, her eyes shining with pride, and we'll keep doing it. As they drove home, Matthew felt a renewed sense of purpose. The journey he had embarked upon was not just about uncovering his grandfather's past. It was about creating a future filled with love, connection, and the enduring spirit of those who had served. With the success of the community project fresh in their minds, Matthew and Laura felt invigorated by the possibilities that lay ahead. The support group continued to thrive, drawing in more veterans and their families, fostering a sense of connection that had become a lifeline for many. One evening, as they prepared for the next meeting, Matthew glanced through the letters from Grandpa Henry once more. He found himself reflecting on the lessons his grandfather had imparted about resilience, love, and the importance of sharing one's story. "Mom, I've been thinking," he said, looking up from the letters, "what if we created a mentorship program for younger veterans? They could pair up with someone from our group to share experiences and provide guidance." "That's a wonderful idea," Laura replied, her face lighting up with enthusiasm. "We could help bridge the gap between generations, fostering understanding and support." As they organized the mentorship program, Matthew felt a renewed sense of purpose. He wanted to ensure that the stories of veterans like his grandfathers would continue to resonate through time, shaping future generations. On the day of the program launch, the atmosphere was charged with excitement. Veterans and younger service members gathered in the community center, eager to connect and share their experiences. "Welcome everyone," Matthew began, his voice steady as he stood before the group. "Today we're here to honor the journeys we've all taken and to create new connections that will help us navigate the challenges ahead. This mentorship program is about sharing wisdom, fostering understanding, and ensuring that the stories of our past continue to inspire our future." As the event unfolded, Matthew watched as veterans paired up with younger service members, sharing stories and experiences that bridged the gap between generations. Laughter mingled with tears as they opened up about their journeys, creating bonds that felt like family. "Thank you for creating this space," one young veteran, Emily, said as she spoke to her mentor, Mr. Thompson. "It's comforting to know that I'm not alone in this journey." Mr. Thompson nodded, his eyes filled with warmth. "You're never alone, Emily. We're all in this together. The bonds we form here will help us navigate the challenges ahead." As the program continued, Matthew felt a profound sense of fulfillment. They were not only honoring the legacy of his grandfather, but were also creating a future filled with hope and understanding. After the event concluded, Matthew and Laura reflected on the day's success. "We've created something special here," Laura said, her voice filled with pride. "Absolutely," Matthew replied, a smile spreading across his face. "And I believe it's just the beginning." As spring unfolded into summer, the mentorship program flourished, and Matthew found himself immersed in the stories of veterans from different eras. Each meeting felt like a tapestry woven with shared experiences, resilience, and the enduring spirit of hope. One evening, as the sun set over Millfield, painting the sky in vibrant hues, Matthew gathered with the group outside. They had set up chairs under the stars, creating a cozy space for storytelling. "Tonight, let's share stories of resilience," Matthew suggested. "Let's talk about the moments that defined us, the challenges we faced, and how we found strength in each other." As veterans took turns sharing their narratives, Matthew felt a sense of awe wash over him. Each story was unique yet echoed a common theme: the power of connection, the importance of love, and the resilience that defined their journeys. "I remember when I first returned home," one veteran, Jake, began. "I felt lost, like I didn't belong anymore. But it was the support of this group that helped me find my way." Tears glistened in Matthew's eyes as he listened to the stories unfold, realizing that their experiences mirrored those of his grandfather. They were forging a legacy of resilience that would resonate through time, connecting generations. As the night deepened, Matthew felt a sense of peace enveloping him. He understood that the stories they shared were not just about the past. They were about building a future filled with hope, understanding, and love. With each passing month, the community group became a beacon of light in Millfield, drawing in individuals seeking connection and healing. Matthew and Laura worked tirelessly, organizing events, workshops, and support groups, ensuring that the legacy of love and resilience continued to thrive. As summer transitioned into fall, Matthew felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude for the journey he had embarked upon. The bonds formed within the group had created a family, one that celebrated the stories of those who had come before and embraced the future with open arms. One crisp autumn evening, as Matthew stood at the community center, he gazed at the faces around him, each person a testament to the power of love, resilience, and connection. "Together, we've built something beautiful," he said, his voice filled with emotion. "Our stories will continue to inspire generations to come, reminding us all of the strength we find in one another." As the applause filled the room, Matthew felt a sense of fulfillment wash over him. He had not only honored his grandfather's legacy, but had also created a space where love and understanding could flourish. And in that moment, he realized that the journey he had undertaken was not just about uncovering the past. It was about embracing the future, nurturing the bonds of community, and ensuring that the whispers of the heart would echo through time. As the seasons continued to change, Matthew felt a growing sense of connection to the stories of those who had served before him. The mentorship program thrived, creating an environment where veterans of all ages could share their experiences and support one another. One chilly evening, as winter approached, Matthew gathered with the group in the community center. They had created a tradition of sharing stories during the colder months, a way to foster warmth and connection in the midst of the chill. "Tonight, let's talk about the moments that challenged us the most," Matthew suggested, feeling the weight of the words. "Let's share the shadows we faced and how we found our way back into the light." As veterans took turns sharing their narratives, Matthew listened intently, absorbing their stories of resilience and courage. Each tale revealed the complexities of life after service, struggles with reintegration, the burdens of loss, and the ongoing journey of healing. One veteran, Sam, spoke of the challenges he faced after returning home. "I didn't know how to fit back into my old life," he admitted, his voice trembling. "The things I experienced haunted me, and I felt isolated, like no one could understand what I had gone through." Matthew felt a surge of empathy as he listened, understanding that these feelings were all too common among veterans. "You're not alone in this, Sam," he said, his voice steady. "We're all here to support each other." Another veteran, Linda, shared her own struggles. "When I came back, I felt like a stranger in my own family," she said, tears glistening in her eyes. "It took time to rebuild those connections, but with the help of this group, I found my way back." Matthew watched as the room filled with understanding and compassion. They were all connected by shared experiences, a bond forged in the fires of adversity. As the night wore on, Matthew felt a growing sense of responsibility to continue fostering this community of support. "We need to create a safe space for all of us to share our stories, to navigate the challenges together," he said, determination in his voice. As winter settled over Millfield, Matthew and Laura began organizing a series of workshops focused on emotional healing and resilience. They invited mental health professionals to facilitate discussions on coping strategies and self-care, ensuring that veterans had the tools they needed to navigate the complexities of life after service. The workshops quickly gained traction, drawing in veterans from all walks of life. Matthew felt a sense of fulfillment as they explored topics such as grief, trauma, and the importance of reaching out for help. One evening, as they gathered for a workshop, a new face appeared in the crowd, a young man named Mark, who had recently returned from deployment. He looked apprehensive, as if uncertain of his place in the group. "Welcome, Mark," Matthew said, his voice warm and inviting. "We're glad you're here. This is a safe space to share your experiences, and we're all here to support you." Mark hesitated before speaking. "I've been struggling to adjust. I don't know how to talk about what I've been through," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "You're not alone," Linda chimed in, her eyes filled with understanding. "It's tough to open up, but this group is here for you. We've all faced similar challenges." As the workshop continued, Mark began to share his story, gradually revealing the weight of his experiences. The group listened intently, offering encouragement and support, creating an atmosphere of acceptance. "I felt so lost when I got back," Mark said, tears welling in his eyes. I didn't know how to talk to my family or friends about what I had seen. I felt like I was carrying a burden no one could understand. Matthew felt a deep empathy for Mark, remembering his own struggles as he navigated the complexities of grief and loss. It takes time, but sharing your story can be a powerful step towards healing, he said gently. We're all here to listen. As the weeks passed, Mark became an integral part of the group, slowly finding his voice amidst the shadows of his past. Matthew watched in awe as he began to connect with other veterans, sharing laughter and camaraderie, gradually transforming his pain into strength. One evening, as they gathered for a reflection session, Mark stood up, his voice filled with gratitude. I want to thank all of you for welcoming me. I didn't think I could ever talk about my experiences, but this group has changed that. You've shown me that I'm not alone. Matthew felt a swell of pride, knowing that the space they had created was making a difference in people's lives. That's what this is all about, he said, smiling. Together, we're forging a legacy of resilience, one story at a time. As winter deepened, the bonds within the group grew stronger, a testament to the healing power of shared experiences. They faced the challenges together, navigating the shadows of their past while embracing the light of connection and understanding. And amidst the darkness, Matthew felt a renewed sense of purpose, knowing that the journey he had undertaken was not just about honoring his grandfather's legacy. It was about creating a future filled with love, hope, and the enduring spirit of those who had served. As the months rolled by, the support group flourished, and Matthew found himself more deeply intertwined with the stories of the veterans. Each meeting became a sanctuary, a space where they could share their struggles and triumphs without judgment. One evening, as winter melted into spring, Matthew sat in the community center, reflecting on the journey they had embarked upon. The warmth of the room contrasted sharply with the cold that still lingered outside, a reminder of the battles fought, both on the battlefield and in life. Tonight, let's talk about the relationships that have shaped us, he suggested, glancing around the circle of faces. How have our experiences affected our connections with family, friends, and ourselves? As veterans took turns sharing their narratives, Matthew listened intently, feeling the weight of their stories. One veteran, Robert, spoke of his strained relationship with his daughter after returning home. I didn't know how to connect with her anymore, he admitted, his voice heavy with emotion. I felt like a stranger in my own family. Reintegration can be incredibly tough, Laura chimed in. It's not just about adjusting to life at home. It's about rebuilding those connections that may have been strained. Robert nodded, tears glistening in his eyes. I missed so much while I was away. I wish I had been there for her. As the conversation unfolded, Matthew felt a surge of empathy for each veteran. They were not just sharing their experiences, they were revealing their vulnerabilities, the complexities of navigating relationships after the trauma of war. Another veteran, Christine, shared her own story. When I got back, I isolated myself. I didn't want to burden anyone with my pain, she said, her voice trembling. But it took a toll on my family. They wanted to help, but I pushed them away. Matthew could see the pain etched on Christine's face, a reflection of the struggles that many veterans faced. It's easy to feel alone in those moments, he said gently, but reaching out for help is a powerful step toward healing. As they continued to share their stories, Matthew felt a sense of unity in the room. They were all navigating similar challenges, yet each journey was unique. The vulnerability displayed within those walls created an atmosphere of trust, allowing them to confront the shadows of their past together. Later that evening, as the meeting wrapped up, Matthew approached Robert. I admire your courage in sharing your story, he said, his voice filled with sincerity. Have you considered reaching out to your daughter? I want to, but I don't know where to start, Robert admitted, his gaze filled with uncertainty. Maybe we can work on it together, Matthew suggested. We could draft a letter or set up a time for you to talk. You don't have to do it alone. Robert's eyes brightened with gratitude. I'd appreciate that, Matthew. Thank you. As the weeks passed, Matthew continued to support Robert in reconnecting with his daughter. They worked together to craft a heartfelt letter expressing his love and willingness to rebuild their relationship. One sunny afternoon, after weeks of anticipation, Robert received a response. "She wants to meet," he said, his voice trembling with excitement and nervousness. "I can't believe it." Matthew felt a rush of joy for his friend. "That's incredible. Just be yourself. You're taking a brave step toward healing." The day of the meeting arrived, and Matthew could sense the tension in Robert as they prepared to meet. "Remember, it's about connection," Matthew reminded him, placing a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "Just be open and honest." As Robert walked into the cafe, Matthew waited outside, his heart pounding with anticipation. Minutes felt like hours as he waited, hoping for a positive outcome. When Robert emerged, a radiant smile lit up his face. "It went well," he exclaimed, his eyes sparkling. "We talked for hours and it felt like old times." Matthew felt a surge of happiness wash over him. "That's amazing, Robert. I'm so proud of you." "I couldn't have done it without your support," Robert said, his gratitude evident. "You've helped me see that I'm not alone in this." As the days turned into weeks, more veterans began to share similar stories of reconnection and healing within the group. The atmosphere was charged with hope and resilience, a testament to the power of vulnerability and support. One evening, Christine shared her own breakthrough. "I reached out to my family last week," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. "I finally told them how much I appreciated their support. It felt so good to let them in." The room erupted in applause, and Matthew felt a swell of pride for his friends. They were not just survivors. They were warriors in their own right, reclaiming their narratives and finding strength in their connections. As spring blossomed into summer, the support group became a beacon of light within the community. The bonds forged through shared experiences continued to grow, creating a network of understanding and empathy that transcended the shadows of the past. Matthew knew that the journey was far from over, but he felt hopeful. He had witnessed the transformative power of storytelling, the resilience that emerged from vulnerability, and the beauty of connection that bound them all together. And in that moment, he understood that the legacy of his grandfather would endure, not just in the pages of his journals, but in the hearts of those who had come together to share their stories, to heal, and to embrace the future with open arms. As summer settled over Millfield, the support group continued to thrive, and Matthew felt a deep sense of fulfillment. The bonds formed within the community had created a family, one that celebrated the stories of resilience and love that emerged from the shadows of war. One evening, as they gathered for their regular meeting, Matthew sensed a palpable energy in the air. The room was filled with laughter and camaraderie as veterans shared their triumphs and challenges. "Tonight, let's focus on resilience," Matthew suggested, his voice steady. "Let's share the moments that defined us, the challenges we faced, and the strength we found within ourselves and each other." As veterans took turns sharing their narratives, Matthew felt a surge of pride. One veteran, David, spoke about his journey of healing after losing a close friend in combat. "It took me a long time to find my way back," he admitted, his voice trembling. "But I learned that resilience isn't about being unbreakable. It's about finding the strength to rise again, even when you feel shattered." "That's such an important perspective," Laura added, her eyes shining with empathy. "Resilience isn't about never falling. It's about how we rise after we fall." As the evening unfolded, Matthew listened intently to each story, absorbing the wisdom shared by his fellow veterans. They were not just recounting their experiences. They were celebrating the resilience that had emerged from their struggles. Later in the meeting, Christine shared her own journey. "After reaching out to my family, I realized how much I had been holding on to," she said, her voice filled with emotion. "Letting them in has been a game changer for me. I feel lighter, freer." Matthew felt a swell of gratitude for the support they had created together. "That's what this group is all about," he said, his heart full. "We're here to lift each other up, to celebrate our victories, no matter how small." As the meeting came to a close, Matthew looked around the room, his heart brimming with pride. They had forged a community rooted in understanding, love, and resilience, a place where stories were shared and healing could begin. Over the following weeks, the group continued to meet regularly, each gathering filled with laughter and connection. Matthew found himself drawn to the stories that unfolded, realizing the impact they had on both the veterans and their families. One evening, as summer began to wane, Matthew suggested a new idea. What if we organize a community event to celebrate resilience? A day filled with stories, art, and activities that showcase the strength of our veterans. Laura's eyes sparkled with excitement. That sounds incredible. We could invite local artists, musicians, and veterans to share their experiences through art and creativity. With renewed enthusiasm, they began planning the event, reaching out to local artists and community members. They envisioned a day that would celebrate the spirit of resilience, fostering connection and understanding within the community. As the event day approached, the anticipation built, and the community rallied around their efforts. The park was transformed into a vibrant space filled with art, music, and storytelling, each element a testament to the strength of the human spirit. On the day of the event, the sun shone brightly, casting a warm glow over the festivities. Matthew stood at the entrance, welcoming guests as they arrived, a sense of pride swelling within him. "Welcome, everyone," he called, his voice ringing out over the crowd. "Today, we come together to celebrate the resilience that unites us all. Let's honor the stories that have shaped our lives and the strength we find in one another." As the day unfolded, guests wandered through the park, engaging with artists who showcased their work, each piece reflecting the journey of resilience. Veterans shared their stories, connecting with community members in meaningful ways. Matthew felt a sense of fulfillment wash over him as he watched the interactions unfold. The event had transformed from an idea into a powerful celebration of hope and healing. Later in the afternoon, as the sun began to set, Matthew gathered everyone for a closing ceremony. "Thank you all for being here today," he said, his heart brimming with gratitude. "Your presence is a testament to the strength of our community and the bonds we've forged together." As applause erupted, Matthew felt a rush of emotion. He had witnessed the transformative power of storytelling and connection, the way they could uplift and inspire. And in that moment, he realized that the journey he had embarked upon was not just about honoring his grandfather's legacy. It was about creating a future filled with love, hope, and the enduring spirit of those who had served. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of gold and orange, Matthew felt a sense of peace enveloping him. They had celebrated resilience, and in doing so, had forged a legacy that would echo through the generations. As autumn settled over Millfield, Matthew felt a renewed sense of purpose as he continued to work with the support group. The bonds formed within their community had deepened, creating a sense of brotherhood that resonated with everyone involved. One evening, as they gathered for their regular meeting, Matthew noticed a shift in the atmosphere. The room was filled with an electric energy, a blend of excitement and anticipation. "I've been thinking about our journey together," Matthew began, addressing the group. "We've shared so many stories and supported one another through challenges, but I believe there's even more we can do." "What do you have in mind?" Sarah asked, her curiosity piqued. "I want to organize a retreat, a weekend away where we can immerse ourselves in nature, connect with one another, and continue to share our stories," Matthew proposed. "It could be a time for reflection, healing, and strengthening the bonds we've built." The room buzzed with enthusiasm, and Matthew felt a wave of excitement wash over him. "We could engage in team-building activities, share meals, and have open discussions around a campfire. It could be a transformative experience for all of us." "I love that idea," Laura chimed in, her eyes sparkling with enthusiasm. "Nature has a way of healing, and this could be a perfect opportunity to deepen our connections." As they began to plan the retreat, Matthew felt a sense of gratitude for the community they had cultivated. The support group had become a sanctuary, a place where veterans could come together to share their experiences and support one another on their journeys. As the date of the retreat approached, excitement filled the air. The group gathered one evening to finalize the details, discussing the itinerary and activities they would engage in during their time away. "I want to emphasize the importance of openness during this retreat," Matthew said, looking around the room. "We'll create a safe space for everyone to share their stories and be vulnerable. It's an opportunity for healing and connection." As the group departed for the retreat, The air was filled with laughter and camaraderie. They arrived at a beautiful campsite nestled in the woods, surrounded by tall trees and the sounds of nature. "Welcome to our home for the weekend," Matthew called out, his heart swelling with excitement. "Let's set up our tents and prepare for an unforgettable experience." As they settled in, Matthew felt a sense of peace enveloping him. They gathered around a campfire that evening, the flames flickering in the cool night air. "Let's start our retreat with a circle of sharing," Matthew suggested. "Each person can share a story that resonates with them, something that has shaped their journey." As the stories unfolded, Matthew listened intently, feeling the weight of their experiences. One veteran spoke about the bonds forged in battle, how those relationships had sustained them through the darkest times. "Brotherhood is more than just a word," he said, his voice filled with conviction. "It's a commitment to one another, to stand by each other no matter what." Matthew felt a deep sense of connection to the stories being shared. The evening air crackled with emotion as they recounted moments of courage, vulnerability, and resilience. Later that night, as the stars twinkled above, Matthew reflected on the power of their gathering. They were not just sharing stories, they were creating a legacy of brotherhood that would endure beyond the confines of the retreat. As the weekend unfolded, the group engaged in various activities that fostered connection and growth. They hiked through the woods, explored the beauty of nature, and participated in team-building exercises that challenged them both physically and emotionally. One afternoon, as they sat by the river, Matthew encouraged everyone to reflect on the journey they had undertaken. "Let's take a moment to acknowledge how far we've come," he said, his voice steady. "Each of you has shown immense courage in sharing your stories and supporting one another. Together, we are creating something powerful." As the retreat came to a close, Matthew felt a profound sense of gratitude for the bonds they had formed. The experience had transformed them, deepening their connections and reinforcing the spirit of brotherhood that defined their community. On the final night, as they gathered around the campfire once more, Matthew looked around at the faces illuminated by the firelight. "Thank you all for being part of this journey," he said, his heart brimming with emotion. "Together we've created a family, a community rooted in love and resilience." As the flames danced in the night, Matthew felt a sense of fulfillment wash over him. They had celebrated their stories, embraced their journeys, and forged connections that would last a lifetime. And in that moment, he understood that the legacy of his grandfather lived on, not just in the pages of his journals, but in the hearts of those who had come together to share their stories, to heal, and to embrace the future with open arms. As the last rays of summer faded into fall, Matthew and Laura continued their work with the support group, fostering connections and creating a space for healing. The bonds formed over the months had grown strong, creating a community united by shared experiences. One crisp autumn evening, as leaves danced in the wind, Matthew stood before the group for their final meeting of the year. "Tonight, we gather not only to share our stories, but to reflect on the journey we've taken together," he began, his voice steady. "We've created a legacy of love, resilience, and understanding." As the group shared their reflections, Matthew felt a sense of pride swell within him. Each story recounted the strength they had found in one another, the way they had navigated the shadows of their past together. "I've learned that vulnerability is a strength," Christine said, her voice filled with emotion. "Opening up has allowed me to reconnect with my family and find peace within myself." "I agree," Robert added. "This group has shown me that I'm not alone in my struggles. We've become a family, and that's something I'll cherish forever." As the meeting continued, Matthew listened intently, absorbing the weight of their words. They had not only honored their past, but had also forged a path toward healing and understanding. Later that evening, Matthew addressed the group once more. "As we look ahead, I want us to remember that our stories matter," he said, his voice filled with conviction. "Let's continue to support one another and carry this legacy forward." With the meeting concluded, Matthew felt a surge of gratitude for the community they had cultivated. They had created a space where love and understanding thrived, a testament to the power of shared experiences. In the weeks that followed, as winter settled over Millfield, Matthew found himself reflecting on the journey he had undertaken. The stories shared within the group had become a source of inspiration, reminding him of the strength that lay within vulnerability. One evening, as snow fell gently outside, Matthew gathered with Laura to discuss the future of the support group. "I want to ensure that this legacy continues," he said, determination in his voice. "We need to find ways to reach more veterans and create spaces for healing." Laura nodded, her eyes shining with support. "I believe we can expand our outreach, work with local organizations and schools to educate others about the importance of mental health and resilience." As they began to brainstorm ideas, Matthew felt a sense of hope wash over him. They would carry the torch forward, ensuring that the stories of veterans would never be forgotten. In the months that followed, Matthew and Laura organized community events focused on mental health awareness and resilience. They partnered with local schools to share the importance of understanding and supporting veterans, creating educational programs that would resonate with future generations. On the day of their first educational event, Matthew stood before a group of students, eager to share the stories that had shaped his life. "Today we're here to talk about the journeys of veterans and the importance of mental health," he began, his heart swelling with passion. Each story is a testament to resilience and strength. As he shared anecdotes from the support group, Matthew felt a profound connection with the students. He watched as their eyes widened with empathy, understanding the weight of the stories being shared. "That's why it's essential to support one another," Matthew concluded. "We all have our battles to face, and together we can create a community that fosters understanding and love." The students erupted into applause, and Matthew felt a surge of fulfillment. They were not just honoring the past, they were creating a future filled with hope and connection. As winter transformed into spring, Matthew and Laura continued their efforts, expanding the reach of the support group and the legacy they had built. The bonds formed within the community resonated, creating a ripple effect that spread through Millfield. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Matthew gathered with the group once more. "Tonight, let's celebrate our journey and the legacy we've created together," he said, his voice filled with emotion. "Each of you has played a vital role in shaping this community, and I am grateful for the love and resilience you've shown." As they shared stories, laughter, and tears, Matthew felt a sense of fulfillment wash over him. The legacy of his grandfather lived on, not just in the pages of his journals, but in the hearts of those who had come together to share their stories, to heal, and to embrace the future with open arms. And in that moment, Matthew understood that the journey was not just about honoring the past. It was about creating a future filled with love, hope, and the enduring spirit of those who had served. Together, they would carry the whispers of the heart, ensuring that the legacy of resilience would echo through generations to come. Years later, as Matthew sat in a cozy corner of his home, surrounded by photographs of the community he had helped foster, he reflected on the journey that had shaped his life. The support group had blossomed into a thriving network of love, understanding, and resilience. He glanced at a framed photograph of his grandfather, Grandpa Henry, smiling at him from the mantel. The stories they had shared, the lessons learned, had become a guiding force in his life. Matthew understood that the legacy of love and resilience was not confined to the past. It lived on in the hearts of those who had embraced it. As he turned to the window, watching the sun set over Millfield, Matthew felt a sense of peace wash over him. The journey he had undertaken had been one of transformation, a path filled with love, connection, and the enduring spirit of those who had served. With a heart full of gratitude, Matthew vowed to continue sharing the stories that mattered, to honor the legacy of his grandfather and all the veterans who had come before him. The whispers of the heart would echo through time, ensuring that the spirit of resilience would always find its way home. As we wrap up this touching tale of resilience, love, and the power of memory, we hope it has inspired you to reflect on your own stories and the legacies that shape us. What moments from your life or your family's history does this story remind you of? We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this journey and want to see more moving stories like this, please give us a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. Your support means the world to us and helps us continue creating these heartfelt narratives. Thank you for joining us today, and remember, every story matters.